So this video is about activity-based costing. Activity-based costing is when we assign an overhead rate based on activities rather than departments or just a general factory rate. I have a couple of questions that we're going to get through here, so let's get started. Okay, so problem one. Mountaineer Tents manufactures and sells heavy and light-duty tents to various outdoor retailers. To better estimate costs, the company recently adopted an activity-based costing system. The company estimates that it will incur, right here, $900,000 in manufacturing overhead costs in the upcoming year. Based on an intense study of their company, the following activities, allocation basis, and percentages of overhead costs were determined. And then it gives us a whole bunch of information. So the first thing it wants us to do is calculate the amount of overhead that should be allocated to each of the three activities. So the first thing we need to do then is figure out how much overhead goes to purchasing, how much goes to inspections, and how much goes to sales. So what we're going to do is we're just going to multiply 900,000 by 55%, and that's going to give us 495,000. And then we can multiply that same 900,000 by 20%, and that'll give us 180,000. And then we take that same 900,000, multiply it by 25%, and that is 225,000. So that's all that A wants to know. We can say that purchasing was 495,000. We can say that inspections were 180,000. And we can say that sales were 225,000. Easy so far, right? So now B wants us to calculate the overhead rates for each of these activities. So the thing you need to remember is that the predetermined overhead rate is equal to the estimated manufacturing overhead divided by the estimated cost driver. This is an equation we've been working with for a long time. It doesn't change at all just because we're doing ABC or traditional or anything like that. It's the same equation. So in order to do this, we need the estimated manufacturing overhead, which we just figured out up here. And now we also need the cost driver. So the cost drivers are here. It tells us that purchasing is allocated based on the number of purchase orders, and it tells us that inspections are the number of inspections, and it tells us that sales are the number of sales orders. And down here it tells us how many purchase orders total we're going to get. It tells us what heavy duty is. It tells us that there's 5,000 heavy duty and 4,000 light duty. This is what they expect. So total, we know that that's going to add up. That doesn't look like the word total, but that's what it says, 9,000. And then if we do the same for the number of inspections, we know that we're expecting roughly 4,000 inspections. And for sales orders, we should get roughly 1,200. So now we have all the information we need to do B down here. So for purchase orders, we have 495,000 divided by the 9,000. We get that it's $55 per purchase order. For the inspections, we know that it's 180,000 divided by the cost driver, 4,000. So that is $45 per inspection. And for sales, it was 225,000 divided by 1,200, which is 187.50 per sale. So now these are the rates. These are how much we are going to charge per purchase order, per inspection, or per sale. So then the last question says, if a single sales order requires 10 purchase orders and 30 inspections to fill, how much overhead should be applied to the order? So you have to read carefully maybe, but so we have a single sales order, 10 purchase orders, and 30 inspections. So that's pretty simple. We just do the math. We have one single sales order, and sales orders cost us $187.50. So that's $187.50. We have 10 purchase orders, and those are, we just figured out up here, 55. So that is equal to 550. And finally, we have 30 inspections. We know that those are $45 a piece. So that is $13.50. So all of that is going to add up to 2087.5. So if a single order required 10 purchase orders and 30 inspections to fill, we would apply $2,087.50 to the order of manufacturing overhead. Not so bad, right? All right, so let's move on to number 2. Monrovia Bike Corporation manufactures 2 models of bicycles, the Gully Runner and the Claim Jumper. In the past, Monrovia had been using a traditional overhead allocation system based on machine hours. Monrovia decided to switch to an activity-based costing system using 2 activity cost pools. Information related to the new costing system is as follows, and then it gives us a whole bunch of information. We should just pay attention that they used to allocate based on machine hours. We might need that later. So let's just remind ourselves, predetermined overhead is the estimated manufacturing overhead divided by the estimated cost driver. So the first thing we need to do is find the rate. So it tells us up here what the estimated overhead costs are and the estimated activities. So we can simply divide 189,000 for the automated assemblies. It's 189,000 in estimated overhead costs and 7,000 machine hours. So that is going to be 27 is the rate for that one. And for parts management, it's 63,000 in estimated overhead. We're going to divide that by 100 parts. And so then that is going to equal 630. So those are our rates. That's how much we're going to charge in manufacturing overhead per machine hour or part number. So under the new activity-based costing system, what amount of overhead costs would Monrovia assign to each claim jumper bicycle? So we need to know that the claim jumper, see screen, the claim jumper produces 300 bicycles, there's 2,400 machine hours used, and 70 part numbers used. So we just figured out that for machine hours, it's $27 per machine hour. So if we do 27 times the 2,400 machine hours, that's going to get you 64,800. And we have 70 parts times $630. So that's 44,100. If we add that together, we get 108,900, because for just the claim jumper bikes, that's how much overhead we're going to apply. But it wants to know for each bike. So we need to remember to divide by the number of bikes. And it tells us that there were 30 bikes, 300 bikes rather, I'm sorry. So that's going to be $363 per bike. All right, so now, if Monrovia was still using its traditional system, how much overhead costs would have been assigned to each gully runner bicycle? Okay, so now we want to go back to the traditional system. For the traditional system, we don't want to know the estimated overhead cost for each individual thing. We want to know the estimated overhead cost total. So if we just go ahead and add the 189 and the 63, we'll get 252,000 was the estimated total cost. And we know how many machine hours we're looking at, right? It tells us right here that there were 7,000 machine hours. So using the same equation, we can say that the predetermined overhead rate is 252 divided by 7,000. So that's $36, and that's going to be per machine hour. So the gully runner bike it tells us that there were 4,800 machine hours used. And we know that they're $36 per machine hour. So if we just multiply those two things, we get 172,800. And we need it per bike. We see back up here the 960. So if we divide by 960, we get that these are 180 per bike. Fairly simple. It's just a different way of applying the manufacturing overhead. The equation's the same. You just have to pay attention to what your cost drivers are. Make sure you find the correct rate. If you have any questions, please contact me. I can help you figure it out. I hope that you guys found this helpful, and have a good night.